All right, folks, welcome to Get Nisty, the series that breaks compliance out of the checkbox trap and turns it into a real security advantage. No fluff, no FUD, just practical strategies to make compliance work for your MSP. I'm Jared Kasner, and I'm joined by my co-founder of Blacksmith InfoSec and co-host of Get Nisty, Michael Zabarski. This episode is going to dive into a few different questions about how to operationalize security, and more importantly, how do you justify continuing to spend on security and compliance when things seem to be working just fine? So our first question today comes from a listener. He says, "Hi, Get Nisty team. This is Kevin Morales. I'm the COO of a 40-person professional services firm in Phoenix. Our MSP keeps flagging security gaps and risk items, but from my seat, everything seems to be working fine. How should business leaders like myself think about cyber risk when there hasn't been a breach, an outage, or an audit failure to force the issue?" Mike, do you want to take this one to start?
Uh, sure. Same way as you think of any other risk. um, so there's a couple of pieces to this, right? There is pure cyber risk, and then there is business risk that has cyber undertones or underlying cyber issues. For example, there might be a business risk of wire fraud where you could send money inadvertently somewhere where you don't want to have it sent, or worse off, have a threat actor send money on your behalf somewhere where you don't want to have it sent. That's a business risk. Now, there's cybersecurity things that can be done to help bolster that. And so, whether it's, hey, make sure that there's clear lines of communications with the bank, make sure there's technical controls where you have to have two people sign off on any sort of wire over X amount of money. Like, and so think of it from that aspect first. What is the business risk? What are we trying to protect? What are we trying to stop from a business perspective? And then how does cybersecurity play into that? If it's, hey, we really need to make sure that uh, you know that our M&A activities aren't being targeted. Cool. How does cybersecurity fit into that? Well, we need to make sure that the files with M&A folder, we're doing regular user audits. We are making sure that only certain people have access to it. Maybe put in some extra protections around that to enforce MFA anytime anyone accesses that. So there's a lot of different things you can do. From a pure cybersecurity standpoint, there's going to be the best practices that you want to implement. Um, there's going to be MFA, train the users, stuff like that. And so when you're thinking about cyber risk, think about it again a little more holistically as risk. And then also think about it from the pure cyber perspective, where you're going to have things that are going to be related just to IT and cybersecurity, where you need to figure out how does this impact me? And all this becomes a risk conversation. You're not going to need to do every single control from every single framework necessarily, but you should look at every control and figure out, hey, how does this control affect me and my business? And do I care about this, or am I willing to accept this risk for now? Maybe it's 40-person professional organization. You don't have IBM or Amazon money, so you're going to need to make some tough choices sometimes, and you're going to have to say, hey, we can't afford this today. We're going to plan for this and budget for this for Q2 2026 or 27, or depending on when you're listening to this podcast, because I keep getting yelled at for throwing dates out there. Maybe we've already done it.
So I think you touched on some important topics. I'm going to add a couple things to this that we can talk about as we go into this. The first one is absence of evidence does not mean evidence of absence, right? So just because nothing has happened so far does not mean that nothing has happened, or like just because you're not aware of it doesn't mean that nothing's happened.
Yep.
But also, just because nothing has happened doesn't mean that we should become complacent, right? The fact that nothing has happened so far doesn't mean that the threat landscape isn't evolving. It doesn't mean that the world around us isn't changing. And so your users are going to be doing things differently, right? In the last couple of years, we've all of a sudden had this proliferation of AI. And all of a sudden, we're seeing companies and users at companies throwing just an insane amount of data at AI systems and asking questions of ChatGPT. And this is stuff that you're probably not even monitoring or aware of necessarily right now. What happens when that information gets out? What happens when ChatGPT 3 comes along? And I'm intentionally saying ChatGPT 3 instead of ChatGPT, right? Somebody does some domain squatting and picks a domain that's very similar, or ChatGPI, and they steal proprietary information because you think you're interacting with ChatGPT, but you've just fat fingered something and you're talking to uh, a bad actor that way, right? So just because nothing has happened so far does not mean that you should stop doing anything. But to Mike's point, when you're having those risk-based conversations, you can look at those risk items, and you should be looking at those risk items with your MSP and saying, "Hey, I appreciate that I have a security gap, right? We practice Swiss cheese defense all over the place. And what does Swiss cheese defense mean? With each layer, there are holes, but when you stack enough layers up, the holes collapse, and you can't see it. It becomes completely opaque, right? It's the same idea here, where yes, you're going to have security gaps on any one layer. There are ways for people to get around it, and so you just stack up enough layers. And the question for you is, how much risk is your business willing to tolerate? How much, like, where do you draw the line? How much do you want to pay for that, right? Because you can never get to zero risk. There's always going to be something that's going to, right? And so, is it 1,000 risk? Is it 10,000 risk? Is it 5 risk? Like, I don't know. I'm making up numbers here, but the idea is like it's a scale and it's a variable, and so as long as you can understand where you fit on that spectrum and which things specifically you are willing to risk and which things you're not, like that's really what it ultimately comes down to.
Yeah, and Jared, I want to touch one of the points that you made around AI. So you brought up, hey, threat actor spins up ChatGPT or ChatGPI. What if it's none of those? What if your professional services firm? I don't know what kind of professional services you do, Kevin, but what if you're doing medical billing for a medical firm and you need to be HIPAA compliant, and they're using just the free version of ChatGPT that won't sign the BAA and isn't secure, right? So there's also compliance issues around that. Maybe it's not nefarious. Maybe it's just people trying to do work faster and adding risk to your organization because they're inputting PHI into an AI model that isn't supposed to support HIPAA. So there's that aspect as well.
Yeah. Now, I do think it is worth continuing to engage with your MSP because there are going to be times where the MSP will ratchet up security more than what you want it to be. Again, the MSP is designed to reduce risk across the board, and a good MSP is going to try to standardize their stack and give everybody the same service offering. That helps them from an efficiency standpoint, helps increase their margins, right? So there is a lot of value for an MSP in standardizing. At the same time, not every company is created equal. I was talking to a friend who effectively runs a Chuck E. Cheese. It's an arcade and sports center, and they've got a full managed SOC and things like that. And I said, well, and he was asking me, hey, I'm paying a ton of money for this. Why am I doing that? I said, well, I don't know. What data are you protecting, and what problems are you solving for? Oh, good question, right? And so when you start to uncover those and ask questions and be open and honest with yourself as well as with your MSP about the things that you're trying to manage and protect, and you'll find very quickly that maybe you have the right level of protection, maybe you have too much, maybe you have too little, but you can right size that security protection and the controls that you have in place if you are having those conversations and if you're willing to engage in that dialogue. But if you're not willing to engage in that dialogue, and your MSP is not willing to engage in that dialogue and is not willing to be flexible on what works for you and what works for your company, there's going to be a problem, and that tension is going to lead to friction, and that friction is going to lead to hurt feelings and probably a separated relationship.
Yeah, the other thing that I'll say is when Jared and I talk to MSPs, we constantly preach, probably the right word, of, hey, get engaged with the business, talk to the business, find out what the business is trying to do, so that you can align security and IT to that to make sure that the business is successful. So I'm going to flip that around on you, Kevin, and say, hey, engage with your MSP and talk to them and let them know, hey, here's what we're trying to do and accomplish over the next 30, 90, 180, 365 days. What can you guys do to enable our success? And have that conversation with them as well. If they're, again, I don't know if they're already having that conversation. Hopefully they are, but if not, you can initiate that conversation yourself as a CEO of a small, medium business and start being proactive about it, because what I've seen a lot in my career, at least, is MSPs providing services to clients and no one's managing that relationship, and no one really even owns that relationship. And so MSPs are kind of working in this void and trying to do the best they can without really understanding the business, and knowing the business is trying to make sure they understand the business either. or managing that relationship. And so it's a two-way street where you guys really do. They are your IT department. They're there to make you successful. So engage with them and really build that relationship.
Yeah, and I want to just add on to that, Mike, that your IT department does not mean your throw tickets over the wall and hope that they fix the problem that you're having, right? Your IT department should not be a cost center. Your IT department should be helping enable your business. And when your IT department is internal, that's true. And when your IT department is external in the form of an MSP, that is still true, right? That IT department is here to help your business be successful. They are here to help you move things forward and accomplish the goals that you have as a business, and reduce the risk that you need to be able to maintain that business, right? So lean on them as a trusted partner. Um, if your MSP is not providing vCIO services or vCISO services, look for one that either another MSP that does offer those services, or somebody who can kind of supplement the MSP that you have to provide that strategic direction. But again, what you're looking for is that strategic partner that's going to help you build your business, right? It's a completely it should be a symbiotic relationship that where they only succeed when you succeed, and you only succeed when they succeed, right? Where we're working things together.
Yeah, and if they're not providing those services, but you like them in general, ask if they do, because we've seen numerous times where a client has been really happy with their MSP, but they're like, "Hey, they're just not doing this. What we need to find a new MSP," and then they find out, "Hey, the MSP actually does do this, but they've been hesitant to come to this client to offer those services and build them more for those services." Um, and so, ask the question.
Yeah, yeah. Again, treat them as a trusted partner, and you will be a lot happier with that relationship. Well, cool, Mike. I feel like we've answered this question? What do you think?
I think so.
All right. Well, do you want to ask our next question?
Sure. This one comes from Allison Park. She's a director of IT at a nonprofit out in Portland. So we've made some real improvements to security and compliance over the last year, but it still feels invisible to leadership. How do we show progress in cybersecurity when success mostly looks like nothing bad has happened? Um, it's funny. One of my first bosses in my career had a saying about IT, not about security. And since then, I've learned that I don't agree with his viewpoint. But he said that IT is like the offensive line of a football team. If someone knows your name, you're doing something wrong. um, and I see that a lot in that mentality in IT and cybersecurity, because you're not partnering with the business, and so you really do feel like if someone knows your name, you've done something horribly wrong. Versus everyone should know your name because you're helping them do their job. So I'll kick it over to you, Jared, but I wanted to start off with a non sequitur.
No, I mean, I actually I'm going to riff on that a little bit, right? If we think about the offensive line and the offensive lines that have been truly great and elite over the years, um, I absolutely hate the Eagles. You can ask George Bardisi about that. He and I have had numerous conversations about that heated rivalry. But at the end of the day, when you have a center like Jason Kelsey, who is an absolutely elite athlete, or at least was while he was still playing, um, where you do know his name, where you can see the difference that he makes on the field. I know you hate that the analogy of the offensive line, where if somebody knows your name, you've done something wrong. Like, I actually completely disagree with that statement. Or I'm agreeing with you that we should hate
Yeah.
that philosophy that not knowing your name is a problem, right? IT should be known, they should be seen, they should be visible, right? It is no longer acceptable for IT to be kind of hidden in the background. We need to be out in front, and there's a reason that we have essentially two board positions, or executive positions in IT these days, the CISO and the CIO. And you could lump the CTO in there, right? You have multiple technical positions at the executive level that should be having some level of board presence, that should be communicating on a regular basis and setting strategic direction. The world has changed in the last 30 years in a way that puts IT and technology at the forefront, and that's only going to accelerate as we see AI continue to devour the universe right now. And so, you know, when you say success mostly looks like nothing bad happened, I think you're looking at this the wrong way, right? You're taking that offensive line should be unknown entities approach. We can and should be talking about the things that we are doing in IT and technology to advance the business. we can and should be talking about the risk levels that we've reduced, the things that we have done, the initiatives that we've taken, and how those are helping advance the mission of the business, right? And this could be very simple things like, hey, we've streamlined operations, right? Instead of talking about, hey, we implemented a new POS, it's, hey, we've streamlined operations, and here are the tangible benefits that we have made from going from the knuckle grinders, for those of you who are old like me and remember the knuckle grinders from the 80s and 90s for credit card processing, into a digital POS. Right? As we start to evolve and add those things in, and we can start to talk about not just, hey, we did this thing, but here's the tangible benefit to the business. That's what success starts looking like, is the tangible business to the tangible benefit to the business. Wow, I can not talk to. But when we get that tangible benefit to the business, and we can articulate that, and we can ideally quantify that, like that's where we go from that silent warrior to the upfront leader, that strategic partner, and that's where they start to trust us and ask us for more help.
Yeah, and realistically, you're there to enable the business, right? The whole point of IT in general is to make the business better, faster, cheaper. So going back to Jared's analogy of the Eagles offensive line, you are there to push the business into into the end zone. But yeah, basically talk about what you're doing to enable the business, as Jared said. And that also involves understanding what the business is trying to do and helping them accomplish that, right? And, if you're talking to the board or the executives and they are trying to meet some numbers, they have some projects in place, guess what? That's where you step in, you say, hey, two pieces. One, we can implement this new technology, maybe, new business process, new whatever, to enable that to come to fruition faster, cheaper, better. Two, we can do it in a more secure way so that we don't have a breakdown in communications. We aren't exposing ourselves to risks that we don't want to be exposed to. And that's really how you get that visibility. It's not through, hey, we blocked 7 million emails and attacks, etc. You get it by saying, hey, by implementing these IT things, again, technology, process, etc., and security things, we have created an environment where the business can accelerate and move faster in a more secure way.
Yeah, and this goes back to something that I've gotten on a soapbox about before. Security should not be the department of no. Security should be the department of, here's how we do this securely. Here's how we reduce risk while accomplishing the goal. Right? And it's our job as security professionals and as IT professionals to grease the skids, to make it easy. And yes, I'm gonna use that same offensive joke about the offensive line that Mike used when he talked about the tush push, right? But you can't do that without having the big bodies up front who are pushing the way and paving the path. You can't do that without having the padding and the helmets and things like that, right? So you're giving the tools to the business to be able to be successful in what they're doing. It should be as frictionless as possible, right? There was a big pushback against MFA for a long time because it was so painful to use, and you getting out your phone or an RSA key fob or whatever to type in a one-time password. Well, we've made things easier. We've added pass keys. We've looked for, like, as we have gotten better about as security professionals and as an industry, where we can not just make things more secure, but also make them lower friction, we're making life better for everybody and improving the quality of life for our constituents. And that's really ultimately what we're trying to do. It's not just about reducing risk. It's about reducing risk responsibly that allows the business to accelerate and do more with the same tools that they have. Mike, you look very pensive here. I'm thinking that means we might have come to the end of this. And
I think so. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we can add, and I think we have answered your question, Allison. And if not, hit us up, and we're happy to kind of discuss more and help you out however we can.
Yeah, no, Mike, I think that's exactly right. Right, this is a weekly advice show. Please, if there are follow-up questions, submit those. We are always happy to take follow-up questions. If you want to get your own question answered, please head over to blacksmithinfosec.com/ask. So submit those questions. We'll be happy to answer them. And for now, thank you all for listening. Welcome to 2026 for season 2 of this podcast, and we're looking forward to a lot more episodes. Yeah. Have a great day, everybody. Get this.
don't